Okay, so today I'm going to look specifically at what Canvas terms new quizzes because they've got two different types of quizzes on there, classic and new, and they are slowly phasing out classic. So I'm going to show you the new quiz tool and how you can use that to really build some engaging, interactive learning for your learners. So I've opened up a course. This is my sandbox course, and to start with, I'm just going to go to quizzes at the side here. So as long as you're a teacher, you should have this on the side. You can see here, I've got a little eye with a crossed out part on there. That just means that students can't see that that link is there, but you do have the access to it. So I'm going to click on there. And I'm going to click plus quiz at the top. In fact, I'm just going to reset my quiz engine choice first. There we go. And click plus quiz. So the very first time that you come in here and you click plus quiz, it's going to give you two options, classic quizzes or new quizzes. So it tells you a rough bit about the differences here. I'm just going to open up a tool that'll let me zoom in for you so you can read it a bit easier. There we go. So classic quizzes, at the moment, it allows you to use SpeedGrader to read the individual responses and download student responses from it for analysis of things. So classic quizzes is good for that side of things. New quizzes is a much more up-to-date, more interactive sort of toolkit for you. All those options of CSVs and things like that are coming very soon. Canvas is currently working on what they're calling Canvas Data 2, and Canvas Data 2 will include information on individual quiz answers and things like that from new quizzes. So I'm going to ping new quizzes in, and I'm going to remember my choice for this course because I just don't like using the classic quizzes. I'm going to click submit. That's then going to bring us through to this page where I can give it a name. So I'm just going to call it DigiLearn Sector Test. And the way that I usually go about it is I leave the points blank to start with. I'll come back and do that afterwards because I never know how many questions I'm going to put in. Obviously, if you've already got it pre-laid out and you know exactly what you're going to do, then put the points in from that point. But I like coming up with my questions on the fly as I'm going through it. So it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 20. I haven't decided yet. So I'm just going to leave that as 0 for now and fill it in afterwards. You'll notice this looks very, very similar to the assignments setup page. And that's because it is. New Quizzes is an external tool. So you could actually go into assignments, build an assignment on this one, and change the submission type to external tool and pick quizzes from the list that's on there. And that would do the same as going into quizzes and building a quiz from there. As with other things, we have the ability to assign to specific people as well. So we can have it to everyone, or we can put it to individual students, or to individual sections, or to individual groups that we've got within our Canvas course. So you have the different options there on what you can pick. And you can set a due date, an available from date, and an until date. And you can actually set this as different for different students. If you click the add there, we could then say, right, so I want my, let's go for my 21-22 section. And I want them to submit it next week because I'm going to give it them today. So I want it to be on the 7th of April. I'm going to make it available from today for them. And I've got one student, so let's go with Rick, who isn't in today, but I know he's going to be in on Friday's lesson. So I'm going to be a bit fairer to him. And I'm going to say, right, I'm going to have you have it from Friday. I'm going to have you submit it in a week on Friday. I'm going to make it available from this Friday for you. So then he has the time from when I've told him until then. So you're giving that individualized access there. Everybody in this section will not be aware that this person has it at a different time. So therefore you're respecting people's individuality. You're respecting people if they've got various disabilities or accessibility issues. It makes sure that the rest of the class don't need to know about them. It's not the same as being in an actual physical quiz where you'd give it out and you say, right, yeah, you've got dyslexia, so you've got an extra 10 minutes or whatever. It gives you that freedom there. I'm just going to do like that. And then at the bottom, a massive difference between this and between normal assignments is you have this build button here. So I'm going to click build. It's going to tell me not all the sections have got it, and that's good. I don't want all the sections to have it. And it's going to bring me through to the new quiz build page. So this bit here is information that the students are going to get when they first click on it. So you can give your title in there, and you can add any instructions that you want to have at the top of the quiz onto that. And it's got a rich content editor. It's not quite as advanced as the rich content editor for pages and things. Again, that is something that is going to be updated in time by Canvas. But for now, you have the basic things, but you can't bring LTIs in on this one, unfortunately. And it's all about this blue plus. This blue plus unlocks everything that you're going to want to do with quizzes. So I'm going to click on there, and we can see we have a lot of different content types. And we've got a thing called stimulus as well. So we're going to start off by bringing a stimulus in. So the stimulus is something that you want the students to have access to whilst they're doing the question. So to take it to past paper sort of things, you'll often have past paper where you've got an image of something and then they've got to explain the image, or they've got to answer questions around that image. So let's just call it cell structure. And I'll just pop online and let's find a eukaryotic cell. Just steal this picture very quickly. Obviously, what I usually have in my settings when I'm doing image searches is I make sure, I'll just close that down and refresh this a little bit. In my tools, on usage rights, always click Creative Commons licenses. Let's not steal that picture, let's steal this one instead, and let's go for a plant cell. Save that image and use it. Because it's Creative Commons, it's legal for us to use that image in our things. So always make sure you've got Creative Commons ticked on there. Don't want to get people in bad habits. But then click the little upload media, and you can drag that image in like that. Give it some alt text, so it's a labeled plant cell. There we go. Obviously, what you'd want to do on there with that alt text is put more than just labeled plant cell. You want to say labeled plant cell showing cytoplasm, nucleus, cell membrane, cellular cell wall, mitochondrion, permanent vacuole, and chloroplast on there. So we've got that there now. And then you've got some options on your orientation. Do you want questions to go to the right of it, or do you want questions to go below it? Now, this is only for if the screen is big enough. If they're using a computer screen like this one, it's got a big computer screen, they'll be able to have the questions to the side. If they're doing it on a mobile, it'll always be below for them. But you've got the option there of do you want it to the right or below. And then when you're done with it, just close this little window down. You just click Add Stimulus there. And now we have some more options have arrived. We've got a little plus above, so if you want to ask a question above it, so the one that isn't associated to the cell structure, and we'll come to it first, we can click Add Content for Above. Or if you want something below it that's not associated to the stimulus, we can click that little plus there, and that'll put it below it. Or we can click Attach Question here. And wherever we build things, we've got the ability to move them around as well. So for now, I'm just going to build one above, as if I've made a mistake and clicked above it. And I'm going to go for our categorization question. So categorization question, it's in the title. You're getting them to put things into categories. So first off, we've got this option here, which is question title. Students are not going to see question title. This bit is solely for if you're planning on making an item bank out of it or not. The question stem is actually the question that you want to ask the students. So in the question stem, we might ask to, let's see, assign cell structures to whether they are from prokaryotes or eukaryotes, for instance. And there, obviously, I'm using cells because I used to be a science teacher, so that's where I'm bringing that in. You then decide on your category 1, so we've got prokaryotes, we've got category 2, eukaryotes. And then we can get some bits and pieces into here as well. So, we've got cell membrane, we've got nucleus, things like that in there. And you can add as many different things to this as you want for them to drag across, and you're putting them in the right place. That's what you're looking at. You want them to be in the correct place for it. You can also add distractors. So we can add in things like cell battery, for instance, on there as a distractor, because obviously students will think of mitochondria as the battery of the cell, and they'll get distracted by that. So you can build those distractors in. You've then got options, and this one, the only one it's got is show on-screen calculator. You can align this to outcomes in the course if you're using outcomes, and we'll be covering those in a later session when we do about how you can use these for BTECs. And we've also got item banking, so we can add this to the bank later on. I always advise only use add to bank once you've made all the questions that you want, and I'll show you what you can do with that later on. And a key thing for most of these is, unfortunately, you can only make them worth 1 point. And you can make them worth more, but it will only ever process it as it's fully done and it's fully correct, or it's not correct. So if they get so much as 1 in the wrong place, it'll give them 0 marks. So I always find it best to just put these ones as 1 point, so they know that they've got to get it all right, and it's simple, just a right or wrong. That's particularly if you're going to factor in percentage-based passing and things like that. You don't want to get it to the point that they have to get this question completely right and every other question completely right when you just want an 80% pass rate on it. So 1 point is safe on there. And you've got a little thing here as well. So you can put what feedback do you want to give for correct answers, what feedback do you want to give for incorrect answers, and it's a general feedback that you want to give regardless of whether it's correct or incorrect. So by doing that, you're then automatically building this as a teaching tool. So it's not just a testing tool, it's now a formative teaching tool, because you've got those comments in there where you're giving them more information. You might put hyperlinks to further study or things like that in there to really help them out. So I'm just going to click cancel because I don't want to save any things in that one. And then I'm going to press done. And we can see this is what it'll look like if they've answered it correctly. And if I just go into the preview mode of this, it takes a while to load in preview. It won't take this long for students. This is what the students get. So they'll have to drag these across like that for it. And then click submit. It'll auto grade it for them. So they've got 1 out of 1 point. If they had any feedback written on here, it would have popped up alongside the question with what that feedback was for them as well. So we built our first question, and like I said, I've deliberately built it in the wrong place because I want it to be next to the cell structure. So now I can grab it by these dots that we've got here with a left click, and I can drag it down to where I want it to be. And it's the drop question here is there for above the stimulus, and there for next to the stimulus. And obviously, if I was below the stimulus, it would say it there as well. So I want to drop it here. And now when we go into our preview, what we'll see is that we've got that stimulus bit next to it. So we've used this for staff training, and we've had videos embedded into here, and they watch the video and then they answer the questions based on the video as they're watching it. They're able to answer it next to it. So it just puts it there. And like I say, it's like that past paper sort of thing where you would have that one bit of information and then things next to it. So let's go through some of the other functionalities that we've got. So we've got our categorization one. We then come to one of the ones that you will have to mark yourself, which is an essay question. So most of these are automatically marked, but essay questions, by their very nature, you'll have to mark them for them. And in our enter question prompt, you'd write in, write your essay answer here. So it's a long answer question. And you've got some options as to what you can give them. You can give them an on-screen calculator. You've got the rich content editor if you want to allow them to add pictures to it and things like that. You can put a spell check in if you want to. Do you want to put a word count in there? And do you want to set a word limit? So if you want to have the minimum of 100 words and a maximum of 1,000, you could set that in there, and then the student would have to reach that before they could submit it. There's also a grading notes here. This is just for the person marking. So you can write in the grading notes of what are you expecting to see in that essay answer. So again, going back to past paper questions, you could just put in what the past paper said on what you're wanting to look for different marks. And again, we can align it to our outcomes and we can bank it. And with this one, because you're manually marking it, you can set the points to whatever you want it to be. So, we could have it as a 10-pointer on there. And you can also set default, correct, incorrect, and general feedback on here. But you will be marking this individually. So you'll be able to add that more personalized feedback as well when you're marking it in SpeedGrader. Yes, Chrissy. Chrissy, it would have to be on or under the limit for it to work on that one. So that's good. If it is something where it is, it has to be 500 words or 500. It is words. It's not characters, so it has to be 500 words. It's great with students who are like me and tend to waffle a lot, and you're trying to get them out of that sort of thing. Just clicked on. Each time with these questions, you've either got to press done or cancel. Unfortunately, it can't save a question that you're halfway through building. You have to finish building it before it'll let you move on to the next one. We've got file upload. So this could be potentially useful for if you're setting a quiz and you've given them maybe a graphing exercise or something like that they've got to do, and you get them to draw a graph. I'll come back to that in a moment for you, Scott, on that one. Once I've gone through all the different question types. Scott's just asked about randomization, and there is randomization built in. I'll show you that very soon. So we've got our question stem again for this. So you put in upload your diagram. And then again, you've got some limits on there. So you can limit the number of files you want. So you don't want them to upload hundreds. You might want them to just upload one for it. So you can set it to one. And you can even restrict file types as well. So if you're expecting it to be a photograph of something that they've done, you could limit it to being JPEGs, PNGs, something like that, to make sure that it is definitely the correct file type that you're getting. This is also useful. And I know I've told students to write me a research essay on something, and I've got a PowerPoint back. And I love PowerPoints, but when you've asked for a research essay, you don't want a PowerPoint. You want an essay. So you could limit it to being a doc type or something like that for it. And again, you can set the points to that to whatever you want because you will be manually marking that. Next long list is fill in the blank. And this one kind of speaks for itself. You are filling in blanks. So you write in the statement that you want to write in. So the DigiLearn sector is the best PLN out there. And we can highlight this and press enter. Oh, no, that ended up taking too much out of it. It needs to be just one. Oh, I wrote it in the wrong thing. Sorry, easily done. Question stem is an optional thing where you'd say write in the blank. It's type the statement is where you put it in. There. I'd highlight the DigiLearn sector. Press enter. And there we go. We've now got, they have to type in digital insector at the moment. And with this open entry type, it can just contain digital insector. So as long as they've written that bit in there somewhere, that's okay. But we do have some other options. We've got close enough. So close enough is with the Levenstein distance. So have they got a spelling error in there or something like that? Do you want it to be spelling only? You don't care whether they're using capital letters for it or not. How many letters are you happy for it to be wrong on the Levenstein distance from it? So obviously that way you're not punishing dyslexic students if they're not able to type the word out correctly. They've got that there. Exact match. So it has to be exactly the same as you've written it. This is useful if you're wanting it to be a very specific scientific term or something like that, where it has to be correct, because you know in the exam they'd get marked on if it was spelt correctly or not. So you've got to be exact match with it. You can specify correct answers. So obviously with this particular one, it doesn't work very well, but say you were doing something for maths and you wanted it to, you want them to come out with the answer 1/4. So students might write that as 1/4. They might write it as 1 space line space 4. They might write it as 25%. They might write it as 0.25. They might write it as 1/4 or 1/4. By doing that, you've covered a lot of the ground of what your students might answer for it, because what you're interested in is that they've got the fact that it is 1/4 of it. It doesn't really matter how they've written it down. It's there. Yep, it could be 1/4 like that as well, 1/4 written like that one as well. So you cover the different ways that they might write it down, just to try and be fair on them. But also it may be that you put something in that could have multiple answers, so you want to put it in like that. And we've got regular expression match as well, which is how Google does things. I've got no idea how it works on that one. I'll be honest with you. There is documentation on Canvas that explains how it works. But yes, it basically, it's looking at if you put in something like happy and they put in something like ecstatic or something like that, it should still give them a sort of mark for it, if it's the same sort of thing that they're looking for. But I tend to avoid that one because, like I say, don't quite know how it works. You've then got other options. So we can set it up as a drop down. So you could then write in different things on here. So we've got the Microsoft Innovative Educator Community on there, for instance. And you can have as many or as few as you want in there on the drop downs, and that will just be a clickable drop down, and then they pick the one that they want. And finally, we've got word bank, which works exactly the same as the drop down, but it's a word bank where you're dragging and dropping. Now, if you're going to have a sentence with multiple things in it, as for instance, like that, and then we set this one as a drop down. In a drop down, we could have digital insector in there. And that would be fine because it's a drop down, it's unique just to that one question. But if I change that and I make it into word bank, like that, when we go into our preview mode, you'll see what the issue is if you haven't already figured it out. So just wait for it to load. There we go. It's now saying the same things twice. Which one's the correct one? You've got no way of knowing. So if you are going to do different things in there, make sure it's not got the same words used for it. Come up with other ones for it. So that's our fill in the blanks. Again, fill in the blank, limit it to 1 mark. It can only cope with 1 mark. Same way as the just turn off the on-screen calculator. I clicked that by accident. It can't do part marks on this one yet. Part marks are coming, but they're not in all of these yet. Next one along is formula. This one's quite useful for maths tutors, but is a bit complicated. So I'm going to do this one that they give us as the example. So what is 5 plus x? So you write in your thing and you define your variables by typing it round. You can then, you see it listed below, and you can specify the range of possible values for it. So you've got minimum of 1 and maximum of 100. And then you write the formula for it. So in this case, it's 5 plus x. And then you generate the possible solutions. And you can decide, do you want it to be to a certain number of decimal places? What sort of margin type do you want it? Do you want it to be absolute or percent? What margin of error are you going to allow them to have? And then we click generate. And that's going to create 200 potential combinations for students to work through. Just to make your life a lot easier as a teacher, where you're wanting them to just test answering the same sort of formulaic question again and again and again. It generates all of those things for you in here. Again, quite a useful one. And they basically get just one of these randomly selected ones to answer. So if I go into the preview mode again, once that's done, there we go. So this is randomly picked 5 plus 96. I could duplicate this one, and it'll do the same thing again, and click done. And it's picked the same randomization. That's always fun. It shouldn't pick exactly the same one for us on that. So let's just change that to 90. Do that. Generate the solutions first. Click done. And there we go. It's put another one of them in there for you. So you can have multiple different ones coming up for the students, and it'll randomly generate that question from the selection of them for each student. So you'll get a slightly different one for each student, which is good. It means students aren't going to just copy the answer from each other. We've then got my favorite one, which is hotspot. And this is something that's become increasingly useful for staff using. But unfortunately, on an accessibility side of things, it's not great because it's built around an image. So because it's all built around an image and it requires that image for it to work, it makes it very difficult for students who have a screen reader or who have visual issues. So if you do have somebody who's got visual issues in your class, find a different way of doing this. But if you don't have somebody with visual issues, then you can carry on with the hotspot questions. So I'm just going to put in that picture that we had before. There we go. Pop that in. And I can put in a question and say, select vacuole. Now, obviously, this has got it labelled. Ideally, you wouldn't have a labelled thing on there. But you've got the ability to draw a square around the image that you want it to be. You can draw an oval around the image that you want it to be. And you can even do a polygonal, which becomes a bit more complicated and complex to actually get right, but you can put as many points in it as you need to make it exact to the image that you want it to be in. Like this, for instance, on there. So as long as the student selects within that area, they get the mark. So we've used this with our maritime courses, and they've got the bridge in front of them with all the various buttons that they've got. And the question is, click on the control panel that you go to do X. And then they have to click the control panel that they'd go to for that. So really useful. Again, can only give 1 point. Unfortunately, it doesn't do multiple hotspots in one image at the moment. You'd have to do you'd have to do this again and again and again to get all the different things that you wanted on there. Next thing is matching. And for this one, you're matching a question to an answer, or an answer to a question, whichever way around you want to look at it. So it's select the correct term for each statement. Now, one thing that we found with these is, particularly on mobiles, the text can get cut off in the answers. It never gets cut off in the question, but it can get cut off in the answers. So we found put the statement as the question and put the term as the answer. So, for instance, we can have digital pedagogy there, and it's the art of using tech to enable learning by students. Very simplified definition there, I'm aware, but that is effectively what it comes down to. And we've got things like interactive. Again, simplifying it allows students to click and move content. Then again, very, very simple definition there, but I'm just coming up with it off the top of my head. And this is going to give you a drop-down list that's going to contain all of the options in here. And then if you want to make sure that it's not just the answers to the questions, because you know what students can be like, they can be like, oh yeah, I know what that one is, I know what that one is, so I'll now figure out what the last one is, because it's the one that's left over. You can add distractors in, and those distractors mean there'll be more options than there are questions. So you can put things in there to distract. And again, with this one, they've updated this one. So this one can now manage partial credit. So you can see they are updating them, and they're updating them every month. A new one gets updated. So we can now allow partial credit for these matchings. So with this, it means you can put your score as 5 if you've got 5 questions on there, and then just click partial credit. And if they've only got 4 right, they'll get 4 marks out of 5 for it. So that's really good. Or you've got exact match. And on here as well, you've got the ability to shuffle questions around within it. So it's not the same for all students. And again, that's just a way of trying to curb cheating and score sharing on there. And we've got our feedback on there again as well. Done. Our next one, we've got multiple answer. Now, it's from this one that I actually learned a key thing about multiple choice quizzes across the whole internet. Did you know that if it is a square box for you to select, then there are more than one answer? If it's a circle, there is only one answer. And that's the same across all things. And there's a lot of people who aren't aware of that. So if you're ever filling something in, if it's got square boxes, then there's multiple answers for you. So that's just a useful thing to know. So in here, you'd put in your question, and then you'd put in your answers. And you can tick these boxes to say, I want all of these to be the answer. Or I only want 3 of them. Or I only want 2 of them for it. And again, you can shuffle the choices around. And we've got the option for partial credit on there and exact match. So with this one, you can set it to a certain number of points. Yep. Our next one along is multiple choice. Now this is a bit more fancy and has a bit more to it than previous ones have. So obviously we've got you can pick your specific answer that you want it to be. You put your question in, you put your answers in. You can give feedback based on what the student has selected. So this becomes instantly more useful for us because you can start putting in feedback based on individual choices. So we know when we're setting multiple choice questions, we tend to make one that's correct. One answer is the correct one, obviously. One answer could be correct, or say again, if you're doing maths or something like that, it might be one step removed from what the final answer is. And then you've got one that's not right and one that's completely daft. So obviously you might want the feedback for the correct one. Well done, this is correct. This is how you've got to that answer, and you put in what the calculation is. In the one that's partially correct, but they've not finished it, you could explain you've missed out this part of the equation. You need to go on and do this bit to get the right answer. On the one that's not right, you can just say, unfortunately, this isn't right. I've put a common trip up in there or something like that. And then the one that's completely daft, you can just go, no, you're daft. Obviously, don't put no, you're daft. But you get what I mean. You can say, no, this is completely wrong. I understand you fundamentally missed what the question is about. Click on this link to get more revision and or to learn more about this style of question or this style of calculation on there. You've also got the option to vary points by answer. So you can actually make it that each answer has a different level of points. So you could make it that 2 are correct in this one potentially. Or again, going off that initial idea I had of you've got one that is the fully correct answer, so you might want to make that worth 2 marks. You might have one that's just missing something, so you might make that 1 mark. This can also tie in with a thing that I'm going to cover in the next session, which is called mastery paths. So you could set this up that you've just got a quiz with a single question in it, and the top bit's worth 2 points, the next one's worth 1, and the bottom's worth 0. And that can actually then lead to branching further in your course. So the people who pick the top choice, whatever that might be, it might be, I want to study, I don't know, automotive engineering. They then get automotive engineering themed things. The one who's clicked I want to do marine engineering gets marine engineering themed things. The one who said that I want to look at nuclear engineering gets nuclear engineering things. So it then allows you to branch off based on what they've selected in this quiz, which is really useful. And that's a feature that's just built into Canvas. And we've got shuffle choices, and we've got our overarching feedback as well for it that we can use. Numeric, it's exactly the same as fill in the blank, really, but it's for a numeric answer. And you've got various different answers on there. So do you want an exact response? And that answer is whatever you put in there. Do you want to allow them a margin of error? And do you want that to be based on percentage or based on absolute margin of errors? Do you want them to give an answer that's within a range? So they have to have picked a number that falls within a range of numbers. Or do you want it to be precise? So when they're answering, what precision do you want it to be in significant digits or decimal places? So that's great if you're using incredibly large numbers for things or incredibly small numbers for things, and you want to make sure you're getting it to exactly the right place for it. One thing I do want to show as well on that numeric one is one of the features that I didn't show in the question stem earlier. You do have MathQuill, which gives you LaTeX. So you're actually able to write out quite complex equations into here and then put the answer in. So it gives you a lot of freedom in that for those who are doing high-level mathematics as part of their courses. We've then got ordering. So in this one, it's you set up a thing in a particular order for them. So you put in your questions, they put these in the correct order. You can have a top and bottom label if you want to on there. So you could have label things from hot to cold, or you could have the first step and the last step written in if you wanted to, and then you write in all the different labels. I'd recommend the maximum really that you want to put into here is 8 steps. It gets very confusing and hard to follow if you do more than that for students. And you can decide, you can take the labels off if you want to. And you can even display the answers in a paragraph if you want, but it doesn't necessarily look good. The ones that we've done in the past have looked a bit funny. But have a play with it, see what you can do, see what comes out at the end. And again, you've got your points there. Keep this one as 1 because you don't have that partial awarding option. And you've got your feedback that you can plug in as well. And then our final one, very simple, true or false. It's a multiple choice one that's already filled in true or false for you to save you some time. So they're all the different question types that we've got. There is this option for item banking, and we saw that as we were going through. We could make item banks. If I just click here and I click this little piggy bank up in the top, yes, you see the answers to put in the order. It just shuffles the order of it for you, Donna. So they've then got to put them in the correct order by dragging and dropping them to where they want to be. So I've got this little piggy bank here for item banking. And when we've banked things before, here's some I made earlier and things that have been used earlier. And this is all of them. And we've got various ones that are shared to courses or built into the institution. And you can search for various different ones as well that we've got there. So I've got one on Canvas here. And I've got 17 questions within it. So I can click on there. And now I can pick individual ones from here and just drop it directly in just by clicking that plus. Now I can't edit these whilst they're in there, but I can drop them in. And we can see we've got our stimuluses there as well. So I can bring our stimuli in and then bring the questions in separately from it if I wanted to. I've also got this option, this all/random. So if I click that one, it's going to pop into the assignment for me. It's thinking about it at the moment because it's dragging it from our internal section. There we go. Just go down to where it's put it, right at the bottom. And we can see here, it's pulled all questions from the bank, and I have it as use all questions. Or I can click randomly select questions. I can decide how many I want to pull. So I want to pull 5 from that bank. It's going to pull 5 questions at random from that item bank I've made and make them worth 1 point per question. And it'll be a different 5 every time somebody opens this to look at. Obviously, it reaches a limit. At some point, it's going to look round on itself, but there's 17 in there. So chances of students in the same class getting the same set of questions, and particularly getting the same set of questions in the same order, is very slim on that one. They may get 1 or 2 questions shared. Well, they will get 1 or 2 questions shared between them, but they'd have to know multiple students to get the answers from it all. So that's how you do randomization in it. You build it into the item bank, and then you randomly pop them in. We've also got a variety of different settings that we can use for here as well. So we can shuffle the questions, we can shuffle the answers, we can do 1 question at a time. We can set it up that students need an access code, so they can't even start the quiz until you've given them a code to do so. So if you want it to be limited to just inside a classroom, you could give them a code for that so they can't look at it at home. You can set a time limit on it, so how long you want it to be. You can set IP addresses. So again, if you only want them to do it in the classroom, set the IP addresses of the classroom. So it's only whilst they're on school grounds that they can access it. Do you want to allow a calculator for it? Do you want it to be basic or scientific? Do you want to allow multiple attempts? And if you do want to allow multiple attempts, which score do you want to keep? The highest one, the average, the most recent, or the first one? How many attempts do you want them to do? Do you want to require time gap between attempts as well, so they can't just do it and then instantly go back and do it again? So you've got various different options there that you can do. And you can restrict the result view for students as well. So by default, it's showing them everything when they're finished. But if you click this, you can then limit it. Do you want to show the points that they've got? So if you wanted to do this as a sort of a feedback thing, you probably don't want to show points on there because you wanted to get feedback from the students. Do you want to show the items in the questions? Do you want to show what their response was? Do you want to indicate that it was correct or incorrect? Do you want to show feedback to that item or not? If you do want to show them that it's correct or incorrect, do you want to show them what the correct one was? So various different options that you've got there. So obviously, say you were using this for collecting something, I don't know, like student resilience, how students are feeling. Yeah, if nothing is checked, nothing's given. That's correct on it. But say you were wanting to use this for how students are feeling about a course, you're probably going to put a lot of multiple choice ones in there. So you want to show them what the questions are, you want to show them what their response was, and maybe some feedback if you've given feedback based on each thing on there for them to help them go and find additional help if they want. So that's built there. We've got various different reports, so you can look at quiz and item analysis, and on that one, what that'll do is it'll look at every single quiz question that you've got on there and look at how your students as a whole have responded to it. So is there a particular question that all of your students are struggling with? Are there particular questions that all of your students are excelling in? And that'll give you that analysis there. And we've got the ability to moderate, so you're able to jump into each individual student. When did they do it? What was the score? How long did it take? And you can click the moderate and you can go in and see what their answers were on that one. This is the information that at the moment you can only access through this view, but they are looking to bring out a way that you'll be able to export that. It may be built through APIs, but they may actually build it as a report that you'll be able to build it from. I set it up in quizzes first. I always tend to build my things separate from the modules view just to make sure I get it built the way I want it to. These are going to show up underneath assignments when you're in modules. So if I go into my modules and I click the little plus to add it onto this one, when it loads, there's a lot in this course, so it takes a while to load for us. Yeah, man. Yeah. So it'll be underneath assignments. I'll be able to find it in here. If we got it, there we go. So we've got our Did You Learn test there that we can pop in. You can also tell the difference between classic quizzes and new quizzes, because new quizzes will be coloured in. So the little rocket ship shape for it is coloured like that. So there's a classic one, and there's a new one.